Two protesters were killed and 10 others were wounded on Friday in Cameroon's northwest region, in the latest bout of violence in the English-speaking region of the mostly francophone country. Friday's violence occurred in Dop, about 40 kilometers to the east, after police opened fire when a crowd of about 100 people descended on the police station. Witnesses say they were demanding the release of people arrested on suspicion of setting fire to a French-speaking school last Wednesday. Protests began in November in the northwestern town of Bamenda, when lawyers and teachers claimed their rights were being neglected by Cameroon's French-speaking majority.
The Federation of African Liberation put into our action plan that understanding the differences that have been created amongst us by our oppressors in order to keep us divided, that the Federation of African Liberation strives to ignore or submerge these artificial divisions by focusing our activities and our loyalties upon our one goal, and that is freedom from liberation. Now, it is important, this being in our action plan, to draw attention to instances where this is actually the case, where the divisions that have been put in our community by our oppressors, whether they be colonists, whether they be slave masters, these divisions which cause strife between our people and cause us to eventually even kill each other. And the instance that we're going to talk about today is what is happening in Cameroon. Now, I'm going to be reading from a Washington Post article. The article is entitled, "Africa's Next Civil War Could Be in Cameroon," and it was published on May 30th. These are the different excerpts throughout the article that I'm going to be reading. Since late 2016, Cameroon has faced an increasingly violent uprising in the bilingual country's majority Anglophone regions, where English speakers say they have been marginalized by the French-speaking majority for decades. When peaceful protests started 18 months ago, government officials opened fire on protesters and looted and burned down villages. Now an armed separatist movement is gaining traction. At the end of World War I, the League of Nations divided the German colony of Cameroon between France and Britain. The French-controlled territory won independence in 1960, and the British territory that now makes up the southwest and northwest regions of the country joined the next year. Now, a resident says that the fact of the matter is, in Cameroon, if you don't speak French, you cannot survive in the country. Anglophones say that they are being forced to assimilate into Francophone culture, and their frustrations reached a boiling point in 2016. Now, in 2016, there was a protest movement that was launched with teachers and lawyers at the forefront, attacking the Francophonization of their hometowns. A particular complaint was the growing number of non-English speaking teachers being sent to Anglophone areas. Now, one resident says, "It's not just about language, it's a culture, it's a way of life, it's the way they've been raised." A recent count by the International Crisis Group said that at least 120 civilians and 43 members of the security forces have been killed since the conflict began. Some 20,000 people have fled to Nigeria as refugees, and 160,000 have been displaced within Cameroon, according to the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. What is wrong with this picture? Well, let's start with the fact that Cameroon, like so many places throughout the diaspora, is made up of African people who have been forced to adopt someone else's culture. The worst thing about the fact that if you don't speak French and you are an English speaker in this country is that neither of those were your original language. Your original languages are, I think, over 100 original languages in Cameroon, and not one of them was French or English. So the fact that your oppressor has ingrained into you the sense that if you don't speak my language, the oppressor's language, not your native language, the one that has been taught to you by the same people who have looted you, stolen your resources, killed your women, killed your children, that language. The fact that we have been so brainwashed into thinking that if you don't speak this, then we cannot even be brothers, we're going to oppress you, we're going to treat you differently. Mind you, English is another oppressor's language. This is not a language that has, neither of these languages should have any significance to the actual people there. But because we have been so ingrained with the colonial culture, we have adopted our oppressors' values, we have adopted their principles. Now, one thing that I thought was very interesting when I was doing research on this issue, there was an article by the Vox, where they break down the different ways in which Britain colonized versus How France colonized. And there's no good way to colonize morally. However, it's important to understand why, if you are in a francophone speaking country, why you might feel more passionate about your language. The fact that you might feel that is actually a design of the colonial masters. So some of the things they say is that the British were more interested in containing the cost of their colonies and enlisting the help of mission societies to provide education on their behalf cheaply. Missions had considerable freedom in how they ran schools, recruited teachers, taught religion, and adjusted teaching contents to local conditions. Overall, the educational system was decentralized. Furthermore, the first grades of primary school instruction was in the local vernacular with English as a subject. France, however, with French colonies, their ideology was they aimed for assimilation. To turn Africans into Frenchmen, education was considered key. Schools could not operate without government permission. They had to employ government-certified teachers and follow a government curriculum. In France, French was the only language of instruction. The 1905 law on the separation between the state and the church did limit activities of mission schools, and the state became the main and expensive provider of education. Now, this shows you exactly how things roll out historically. It was not just the intention for France to just colonize. It was the intention to give their subjects their identity. Because if you identify more with your oppressor more than you identify with your own people, then you'll be willing to do things on behalf of your oppressor that is going to kill your own people, kill your own family, and kill your own communities. And I would really caution people, if you are in Cameroon and you feel this sentiment, you feel this loyalty to the French culture, you feel this loyalty to the French language, really question, what am I loyal to? Look at what France is doing in your country. If you don't know, France is the most oppressive country as far as practicing colonialism and neocolonialism. If you also don't know, France does not care about what happens to your people. You just seen what happened when a Malayan immigrant in France rescues a little baby who was about to fall from a building. Had he not rescued that baby, then he would not have been legalized. But because he did something that was seen as admirable and it caught the attention of the press, the French president used that as a moment to garner media attention and look favorable with African people. But you have to ask the question, is France so welcoming of all African people? Are they willing to take all of us? Well, if they're not willing to take us and they're not willing to give us rights in our own country, then what possible reason do I have for admiring, for upholding their culture, for putting their own culture above my culture, my true culture, and not even that, but killing my brothers and sisters who don't assimilate likewise? This is a instance of many that we have throughout the diaspora of us giving in to the pressures from the colonial system to assimilate into something that is self-destruction. And so I bring attention to this just to say that it is important for our people to get past these differences, get past these divisions, and move forward. If we're ever going to go into a place where we can be united as African people and just have any type of showing of progress from the state that we are in today. That is all I'm going to talk about. We will see you in another video.